Hey everyone, welcome to the Evangelist Nick Garrett channel. Today we're talking about proving the Bible with archaeology. One of the criticisms I see commonly in comments is the old, "Yeah, but you can't prove the Bible" comments. I never engage in those conversations because there's too much to cover there. Further, the professional level scientists are not asking such questions, but different ones. Some biblical archaeology has been easy to verify. The Sumerian kings list named the biblical Nimrod, Enmerkar. Some ancient city names that are named in the Bible are discovered and known. An archaeologist at the Oriental Institute of Chicago and the Department of the Land of Israel Studies named Aaron Mayer, while studying the Minoans, found links between them and the Philistines as the sea people of antiquity. Freelance researcher and archaeologist Graham Hancock discovered Goliath's burial mound in Israel. The geologist Randall Carlson teaches about the Younger Dryas, which proves a worldwide flood about 12,000 years ago, confirmed by Greenland's ice core samples. But in general, there is a desire among competing camps to prove once and for all, is the Bible a reliable source of archaeological discovery? Going back into ancient history, Jews, Christians, and more recently Muslims searched for places named in their holy books and where events had taken place. This era gave us many places that are not in fact in the correct location, but draw attention to biblical events and places, such as the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. When archaeology became an academic discipline in the late 19th century, proving or disproving the Bible became a primary goal. A famous quote pointed to the first generation of field researchers who were overwhelmingly American and British, saying, quote, "They dug with a Bible in one hand and a shovel in the other," end quote. After the world powers carved out the nation of Israel with the support of world government in 1948, Israeli archaeologists joined the discipline with the express goal of proving archaeologically their ancient native borders as justification for their actions toward Arab neighbors. Certainly there were also some good motives. Beginning in the 1970s, ironically, accompanying the rise of higher criticism over textual criticism in academia, came the analysis of what constituted objectively factual history. The definition of what constituted archaeological proof of the Bible became difficult to answer. For the most part, archaeologists were successful in verifying people, places, and things from various Old Testament accounts, such as from the Book of Kings, Chronicles. Ample locations and ancient buildings had inscriptions that correlated to biblical references. There remain a handful of issues, though, that make using archaeology difficult in proving the Bible. For example, prove an Abraham ever existed. Prove exactly when the Exodus occurred. While substantial, circumstantial evidence abounds, proving the existence of a person from ancient times using modern scientific frameworks and nomenclature is relied on and trusted in some circles, yet not in others. This is not to say that some ancient people and places were not found, but that there is an argument about certain events, places, inscriptions, and what they mean. Another challenge are the astronomical odds of finding the remains of proof of a living family patriarch or prophet over that of any of the billions of other people that have lived over time. This fact compelled a transition in the goals of biblical archaeology that accepts the value it holds to prove and uphold certain things, but in general, so that consensus can exist between believers and non-believers, all holding the banner of the disciplines of field sciences, it has been to determine how a person like Abraham might have lived, instead of if he did. An example of how this method of archaeology can be universally effective is the story of Jephthah from Judges chapter 11. He makes a bargain with God that if he is given victory over his foes, the Ammonites, he would sacrifice the first person to leave his home and greet him upon his return from battle. It sounds like a strange bargain. Those were different times. But sure enough, archaeologists found that such a wager would make complete sense for the time culturally. God is not a cruel maniac after all. Evidence shows that livestock lived with the people on the first floor of many Israelite homes. And in making the wager, Jephthah would have expected an animal to be the first out the door to greet him. Therefore, instead of archaeology being used to prove the supernatural events of the Bible, archaeologists use their science to better interpret the world in which biblical characters lived and thrived. So in short, archaeology does prove some of what is in the Bible. Certainly, much has not yet been discovered. It must be remembered, though, that the primary goal of a Christian is not to rely or not to rely on the Bible based on strictly objective reality, physical evidence. There is more to it. There is moral law, which can be objective when adopted by society. And there are various forms of subjectivism determined by how one understands and applies the Bible in his or her life. Determining that the library of Ashurbanipal does not help one build faith and become further edified in the walk for Christ. One generally follows principles that tend toward subjective views of Scripture. Only one principle focuses on the study of historical, physical, and cultural setting. One can also isolate and study an unclear and important word from a passage, then a chapter, then a book, then a language. One can analyze the structure of a sentence or passage itself. One can examine context. One can learn to interpret parables strictly according to the type of literature a given book uses. One can compare Scripture with Scripture, and deeper still, one can establish the coherence of truth revealed prayerfully. A Christian balances these seemingly competing interests with the concept of biblical authority. I sometimes see comments that say, anyone who believes myths is just stupid. The Bible's just a myth and you can't prove it. These people miss the big picture that professionals are trying to understand. Is the Bible true? Does the Bible work? Why does the Bible work and how? Work meaning I read it, I do what it says, I pray, and there is a tangible, noticeable change in my life. In his book, Understanding and Applying the Bible, Robertson McQuilken says, quote, "Some people do not understand the Bible because they do not believe it's true, or at least they do not believe that all parts of it are true. Others do not understand it because they are unwilling to obey it. Still others misunderstand the communication because they are unwilling to work hard at searching out meaning." End quote. Many find this to be the case most often. Those who will say, "I've read the whole Bible 2 or 3 times and found it not to be true." That should send up a huge red flag for anybody in a discussion. The Bible is a book that at minimum must be taken at face value, read for what it is, and an attempt made to understand it with an open mind. The bottom line is quite simple and tragic, really. McQuilken gives us the sobering fact that, quote, the methods one chooses for biblical interpretation will depend on one's presupposition about the nature of the Bible, end quote. Am I reading to purposely discredit it? Pretending to be a critical thinker when all I am doing is closing my mind off to the simple words on the page? Or am I at least willing to simply read it as it is, read what it says, and ask myself who, what, when, where, why, with an open mind? Where do I fit into this narrative? Anyway, I look forward to talking with all of you next time. Please visit me on other platforms at Evangelist Nick G, and check out my Amazon author page where you can purchase my books. And I really look forward to the next video together. Have a good one.